Why? Not the kind that comes after betrayal or heartbreak. Not the kind you scream into a pillow at 2 a.m. This one was quiet, blunt. Asked by a woman who hadn't had to ask for help in years. A woman now sitting on the cold pavement, stunned, humiliated and dripping coffee down the front of a cream silk skirt. It happened fast. 1 second, Elena Wade was power walking through downtown Tulsa, earbuds in, latte in one hand, and a tote full of investor packets in the other. The sidewalk had just cleared after the rain. She was already 10 minutes late for the quarterly board meeting. Her mind was on the third slide of her presentation, the one with projections she didn't believe in, but had to pitch anyway. Then a delivery cart from the bakery next door took the corner too wide. Its wheel clipped her calf, not hard, just enough to throw her off balance. She slipped, spun, went down hard. The coffee went with her, all over her skirt, her leg, her pride. Her heel caught. Her elbow throbbed. People looked, then looked away. She sat there for a full beat, stunned, breath shallow. The kind of fall that shakes more than your body. Someone passed her and muttered, "Shouldn't wear stilettos in the rain." She didn't hear the apology, if there was one. What she did hear was the soft shuffle of someone slowing down, then stopping. A young man stepped into view, tall, quiet. He had a tired briefcase and shoes that didn't match the rest of him, like they'd seen better years. He didn't speak at first. He just slipped off a faded grey jacket, something between a coat and a uniform layer, and without asking, knelt and gently draped it across her knees. "Give it a second," he said, voice soft. "Just breathe." She blinked, shocked, a little breathless. "You don't have to." But before she could finish, he offered his hand. And carefully, like helping someone older than his years, lifted her to the curb. That's when it fell. A folded piece of paper slipped from his inside pocket and fluttered down between them. She glanced down. DuPont Grove, interview, 10 a.m. Her heart skipped. "That's today?" He looked embarrassed, but not angry. "Yeah, you're late." He just smiled, still steadying her. A little. And then, for the first time in a long time, she asked something she didn't mean to. "Why?" He didn't pause. "Because you looked like you needed help." That was it. He checked her ankle, asked if she could stand, if she needed anything else. And when she nodded, still dazed, he gave a small nod, turned, and ran. Leaving behind the wrinkled interview sheet, a faint trail of coffee, and the grey jacket still wrapped across her lap. Have you ever watched someone walk away with something they didn't even know they left behind? Not a wallet, not a phone, something smaller, quieter, like the weight of their own kindness still lingering in the air after they're gone. Elena sat still for a long moment on that curb. People passed. Cars hissed by. And the jacket, his jacket, still sat across her knees. She touched the fabric. It wasn't fancy. Faintly smelled of old steam and something clean, maybe laundry soap from a place that only takes quarters. The sleeve was fraying at the cuff, a loose stitch on the inner lining, but it was warm, steady, like the man who left it behind without waiting for thanks, without asking who she was, without knowing she could rewrite his future with a single call. And maybe that was the part that caught in her throat. He didn't even ask her name. Have you ever been helped by someone who didn't expect anything back? No spotlight, no recognition, just showed up because it was the right thing to do? If you have, you remember it, even if it was 10 years ago, even if you never saw their face again. So stay with this, because maybe you've been that person. Maybe someone was that for you. And maybe, just maybe, the smallest moment you almost forgot was the moment that changed everything.
You're listening to Cobi Tells. We don't just tell, we nourish.
Elena Wade had never liked owing anyone, not favors, not apologies, not even a hand held too long in an elevator. She was the kind of woman who paid her debts before the invoice hit the desk, the kind who finished the last word of a pitch before her throat realized it was dry. But something about that jacket sat heavy on her desk. She had brought it back with her that morning, folded it once, set it down without thinking. And now it stared back at her like it belonged there more than she did. Her office was glass-lined and too quiet, 6 floors above the street where he had knelt beside her without a name. The meeting had gone on without her. She walked in 23 minutes late, hair still slightly damp at the tips, knee scraped beneath the hem of a fresh skirt. No one said a word. Because no one dared. Because Elena Wade didn't do chaos. She did recovery. She walked into rooms like they owed her air. But that morning, she'd hesitated. Just once. Before the doors opened, before the first exec turned, she glanced at her reflection and whispered, like a test, "Why would he help me?" No one answered, except the jacket, still folded in her arms like a question she couldn't solve. She watched the security footage later, asked for it, quietly, didn't tell anyone why, and there he was again, not polished, not prepared, holding a piece of paper in one hand, steadying her with the other. No hesitation, no pitch, no attempt to slip her his resume. He just helped, like it was normal, like the world hadn't made people forget how to care unless it was strategic. She leaned back in her chair, one hand still tracing the edge of the worn fabric. Caleb Shaw. The name was on the sign-in log. He had made it to the building. 6 minutes too late. Left before anyone could call him back. No complaints. No follow-up email. Not even a voicemail. And something in that silence settled deeper than any pitch deck ever had. She knew what she had to do, not out of guilt, not even out of curiosity, but because people like him weren't supposed to disappear unnoticed, not in her company, not in her city, and certainly not after a morning like that. The jacket stayed on her desk the rest of the week. Every meeting, every visitor, every late-night call, it remained there, unspoken, unmoved. Because Elena Wade didn't forget small things. Especially not the ones that made her question everything. They didn't roll out a carpet. Didn't print his name on a welcome badge. Didn't even say his name right. Calvin? From Community Outreach? It's Caleb. Right. You with the temp group. He let it slide. Just like the other things. The cracked plastic badge, the printed schedule that had half the meetings missing, the lukewarm greeting from the junior assistant who never made eye contact. Caleb Shaw didn't expect ceremony. He just expected clarity, direction, a desk maybe, or at least a sense that someone knew why he was here. But no one really did. No one except her. He didn't see Elena Wade again that first week. Not in the elevator, not in the break room, not even from across the glass conference hall. She had vanished like smoke, the kind that lingers in your clothes but disappears when you look for it. Instead, Caleb was sent to Building B, the unofficial community wing behind the main campus. No front desk, no branding. Just a laminated sign taped crookedly to the door. Second start, deliveries. Here inside, it smelled like whiteboard markers and second-hand furniture. He met Jessa there, early 30s, copper curls tied back, sleeves always rolled. No title on her door, just a sticky note that said, "Don't knock, just help." She didn't talk much, but she watched everything. The work was real. Sorting donation bins, calling local shelters, drafting schedules for food deliveries and after-school programs. At one point, Caleb spent an hour trying to explain over the phone why the city grant report had 3 different fonts. "We don't make documents to impress," Jessa had said, glancing up. "We make them so kids can eat." It stuck with him. So did the way people looked at him sometimes, like he didn't belong. One of the office interns whispered once as he walked by, "Isn't he the janitor?" Someone else replied, I think he's one of those hire-to-impress hires. He didn't say anything, didn't correct them, just kept showing up. By the end of the second week, things got harder. The program he was assigned to, Second Start, lost a coordinator. Budget got cut. Responsibilities doubled. Caleb was told to step in where needed. No training, no warning. Just a clipboard and a list of names who had signed up for resource meetings that no one had prepared for. He adapted, talked to people, listened. When a teenager named Jordan showed up to the wrong workshop but stayed because the snacks were good, Caleb sat with him anyway. They talked about part-time jobs, about what it meant to start over when your family didn't pick up your calls anymore, about how hard it was to believe in second chances when you've never had a first. But not everyone liked how much Caleb got involved. A man from finance, crisp shirt, brittle smile, cornered him near the copier one day. "Hey, just so you know, this isn't a mentorship program for you. Try not to blur lines, all right?" Caleb nodded once, didn't argue. Didn't explain how Jordan had stayed clean 3 weeks in a row since their talks. Didn't he say how he started making spreadsheet templates to help organize outreach signups better than the system they had? Instead, he stayed after hours, cleaned up the rec room, rewrote the flyers so they didn't sound like legal warnings, and quietly, always quietly, made things work. Jessa noticed. She didn't say much, but one night, after seeing the reorganized resource board, she just muttered, "Didn't think anyone was looking that close." Caleb shrugged. Some things deserve to be seen. She nodded once. That was their entire conversation. But it was more than enough. One morning, a delivery guy asked him where the manager was. Caleb pointed toward Jess's office. The guy looked confused. "Thought it was you. You're always the one moving." Caleb smiled. "Nope. Just passing through." He said it like a joke, but deep down, it echoed in a way he didn't expect. That Friday, as he cleaned up after the teen program's messy art session, he found a folded paper wedged behind a radiator. A drawing, messy lines, blue ink, a big figure helping a small figure up from the ground. One word scribbled below in a kid's handwriting. Why? He stared at it for a long time. Didn't move. Didn't speak, just folded it back up, placed it in his notebook, and kept wiping the paint off the wall. Because that was the thing. People didn't always notice the ones who stayed late, who showed up early, who remembered names. But somewhere between the cracked flyers and chipped mugs, something was shifting. Maybe not in the system, not yet, but in the way the work felt, like it mattered. It started with an email, subject line, internal roundtable, Lift Tulsa Phase 2, sent from an address Caleb didn't recognize. He almost deleted it, thought it was a mass invite. But his name was listed alone. No team, no and others, just him. The following Tuesday, 2 p.m., he stood in the elevator clutching a borrowed notepad and chewing on the corner of his thumbnail. 6th floor. He'd never been up this far. The buttons didn't even light the same. Cooler somehow. Smoother. The glass doors opened to a silent hall. Carpeted. Too bright. He was early, but she was already there. She stood at the far end of the room, back to him. Window light casting a thin halo across her shoulders. Her blazer was grey, hair tied back, hands resting lightly on a table full of binders. She didn't turn right away, just spoke without needing to look. "Mr. Shaw." Caleb froze mid-step. He knew the voice. Not from meetings, not from reports. From a sidewalk, from a jacket. From a morning he hadn't stopped thinking about. "Ms." finally turning. "Wade," she said gently. "But you knew me as the woman who couldn't walk in heels." His throat caught. "You? That was you?" She nodded once. No smile. Just steady. "I recognized you right away. That jacket didn't belong on that street. But it stayed with me. Longer than it stayed with you." She stepped to the side, motioned toward a chair at the table. Behind her sat 3 others, directors, most likely. 2 men, 1 woman, all silent. We've been watching the work you've done in Building B quietly, carefully. I didn't bring you here to thank you. Caleb sat slowly, heart loud. I brought you here to offer something. She slid a folder across the table. Inside, blueprints, expansion charts, draft programs. We're rebuilding Lift Tulsa, and I want someone on the ground, someone who understands the people we serve, helping shape it. He blinked, looked around. You want me to, what, join the team? She met his eyes, direct. No, I want you to help lead it. No one in the room spoke, not for a long time. His background isn't conventional. One of the executives leaned forward, skeptical. With respect. Neither was mine, Elena said evenly. The room stilled again. What makes you so certain? The man asked. And she didn't answer, not with words. She reached into her leather folio, pulled something out, unfolded it, and set it down gently at the center of the table. A jacket, faded gray, frayed at the cuff, still holding the smallest trace of coffee. Because when I fell, he didn't ask who I was. He didn't know he was risking his only interview that week. He just helped, without needing a reason. And I trust people who don't wait for permission to do the right thing. No one dared respond, because there are moments when silence is louder than applause. And that room, full of credentials, titles, polished shoes, suddenly felt too clean, too far from the street where it all began. Later, as the others filtered out, Caleb lingered, still processing. Elena waited with him, let the quiet settle before breaking it. You never came back for the jacket. He looked down at it, swallowed. You're here because we need the kind of clarity you live by. Didn't think I had a reason to. Now you do, she said. You're not here as a case study or a feel-good story. He didn't say anything, just ran a hand down the sleeve, soft fabric, familiar weight. You kept it? Every day since that morning. And when he looked up again, her voice softened. People like you don't usually make it into rooms like this. But you're here, and this is yours to carry, or to pass. No pressure. He stood slowly, nodded. I'll carry it. Because sometimes, one act of kindness, done without reason, becomes the only credential that matters. And sometimes, one word, spoken at the right moment, opens every door. They didn't send out an announcement. No internal memo. No company-wide email. No celebratory post with hashtags and a filtered headshot. But everyone knew. By the end of the week, Caleb Shaw had a badge that opened more doors. Not just physically, but in the way people looked at him now. No longer the maybe intern. No longer the janitor who got lucky. He was now the one Ms. Wade backed. And that meant something. To some, it meant respect. To others, threat. But Caleb didn't act different. He still brought his own lunch. Still walked to the community wing instead of using the staff shuttle. Still wore the same shoes, soles re-glued, just enough to hold. What changed wasn't him. It was the way silence followed him longer than usual in every hallway he entered. Rodney, the finance lead, no longer challenged his presence in meetings. He still said things like, well, that's one perspective. But he didn't interrupt anymore. Didn't tap his pen in that condescending rhythm. And when Caleb spoke, softly, as always, others began nodding. Not out of courtesy, but because the numbers started to make sense when paired with stories, real ones. Elena Wade never took credit. She never sat beside Caleb in the meetings, never referenced that morning, never reminded anyone where the jacket had come from. But during one policy review, when a board member insisted they remove neighborhood input from the design phase, Elena calmly replied, "We don't build programs from the top down anymore. We build from the sidewalk up." She didn't need to glance at Caleb. And he didn't need to thank her. Because some things grow in silence, trust, alignment, a shared language that doesn't need rehearsal. One morning, Jessa came back from her field visit to find Caleb in the rec room, crouched low, showing a teen how to convert a flyer design to mobile format. She watched for a minute, arms crossed. "You're not going anywhere, are you?" she said, almost like a challenge. Caleb grinned. "Not if I can help it." "Good," she replied. "'Cause people are finally reading the flyers." That Friday, he found something in his new office drawer. No note, no name, just a jacket. His jacket. Freshly cleaned, pressed, folded. The frayed cuff still intact. Still his, but lighter somehow. He sat with it for a long time, not holding it, just letting it sit. In the months that followed, Lift Tulsa launched with real traction. They didn't open with a press release. They opened with open doors, workshops, pop-ups in libraries and barbershops, translation booths at food pantries, portable chargers handed out with job fair flyers. Nothing flashy. Everything intentional, and Caleb was in all of it, not as the face, not as the story, but as the one who remembered what it felt like to sit on a curb, late for the one thing that could have changed your life. Now, he was the one making sure no one else missed their moment. Not because he owed the system anything, but because one person had looked at him, really looked, and decided he belonged. The building was nearly empty. 6:45 a.m., the kind of morning where the sky hadn't quite decided on blue or gray. No voices, no phones, just the faint hum of an old coffee machine warming up somewhere behind the lobby wall. Caleb walked in without rush, not late, not early, just enough. In his hand, a folded flyer from a night shelter he visited the evening before. In his other hand, nothing. But over his shoulder, the jacket. Same one. Worn again. Not for style, not for warmth, but because it belonged here now. With him. At the far end of the main floor, someone had dropped a file box. Papers scattered across the tile like cards from a deck mid-shuffle. No panic. Just a young intern kneeling, flustered, trying to gather everything back before the hallway filled. Caleb didn't speak. He just knelt beside her, picked up the ones near the elevator. One page at a time. No rush. No need to be seen. She didn't look up at first, but then she noticed the jacket, the way it hung just slightly worn at the edges, like it had weathered something honest. She looked at him, eyes narrowing like she almost recognized something. Not him, but the feeling. The moment passed. He handed her the last page with a quiet nod. She smiled. That was it. He continued walking, past the glass conference rooms, past the wide bulletin board filled with handwritten names of partner orgs, past the front desk where someone had left a paper cup, half full, still steaming. He paused just once, reached into his folder, slid one page under the corner of the community event board. It wasn't marked urgent. It wasn't branded, just a hand-drawn map, and a single line in small handwriting, because someone might need it. Then he left the jacket, not tossed, not hung, just folded gently across the bench outside the door of the teen mentorship room. No note, no explanation, just there, waiting for the next person who might not ask, "Who are you?" but instead just pause and say, "Why?" Maybe you've helped someone like that before. Maybe you were the only one who stopped. Or maybe you were the one sitting on the sidewalk wondering if anyone would. If this story felt familiar, even a little, you already know why it matters. Tell us your why. We'll be here, listening.